See, it is actually the identification of pressure on the foot. It is usually this type of podia scanning is done for diabetic patients. Feet provide the primary surface of interaction with the environment during locomotion. It is important to diagnose foot problems at an early stage for injury prevention, risk management, and general well being. Although plantar pressure data have been recognized as an important element in the assessment of diabetes patients, information derived from plantar pressure data can also assist in the diagnosing and managing the impairments associated with various musculoskeletal and neurological disorders. As I told you, podia scan is commonly done in diabetic patients. In diabetic care, mean hospitals or clinics that are specialized for diabetes, definitely they will, all the clients in that hospital or clinic will undergo podia scan because it will help to identify the diabetic foot ulcers where the pressure is high, where the pressure is low, how the musculature of the foot, how the skin of the foot is there. All the details can be studied in that scan. Apart from that, even you can recognize the musculoskeletal and neurological disorders through the podia scan. The podia scan provides static and dynamic plantar foot pressure distribution. That means when you are walking, how is the distribution of the pressure on the foot is occurring, and when you are standing, how it occurs. A podia scan is a simple and non-invasive procedure that assesses abnormalities of the nerves based on the plantar distribution of the pressure. It also assesses deformity, infection, breakdown of skin, temperature, edema, ischemia, and callosities. The callosities means I don't know how to explain you. Hardening of the skin and some pus formation will occur. You
Yes,
might
sir.
have seen,
Yes.
and we prescribe
Yes.
MCP chappal for them, microcellular polymer chappal.
Yes.
Podia scan, we can identify with the podia scan that one. Podia scan produces instantaneous, means immediately you can identify, and permanent solution image, high resolution image of the pressure distribution across the plantar surface. See, this is how, there are different shaped objects will be there, and you are asked to stand on this on the screen. Okay, so this will tell the pressure, different shapes, and this is the podia scan. This is how it looks like, and this is the pressure. This is the highest pressure, and this is the lowest pressure. So in the scan, wherever the blue color is there, there you have low pressure, and where this pinkish, dark pinkish color is there or reddish is there, the, that place you are having high intensity of pressure. So there ulcers can happen. So with this you can identify, and suitable cushioning as treatment you can give for them. Did you understand?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Now, what are the uses of the scan? Podia scan. It helps in identifying areas of potential ulceration. As I told you in this picture, see heels. They are high risk for development of ulceration. Okay, metatarsal heads, high risk of developing the ulceration. So like that, we can identify the potential ulceration. Pre and post surgical evaluation. Determining the degree of pronation and supination, it means inversion and eversion. Okay. Screening diabetes and other neuropathy patients. For diabetic compulsory, diabetic patient means the diabetologist will compulsory ask the patient to undergo a podia scan every 6 months. Monitoring regenerative foot disorders and determining the orthotic efficiency. After applying orthosis, any foot orthosis like AFO, KFO, then also we can see whether the orthotic support is putting anywhere high pressure. Are you following? We can see
Yes,
whether the
sir.
orthosis is having any satch foot, suppose we have given. So we can identify, and their padding, extra padding can be given. So that is the helpful of this Podia scan. So that's about the Podia scan. Then we will go for skin fold caliper. Skin fold caliper. Could you see?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Skin fold caliper. A skin fold. See, body anthropometry is very important for identifying. Assessing the nutritional status of the patient. Okay, body anthropometry. There are various techniques of measuring body anthropometries. So one of the best way to identify is skin fold caliper. A skin fold caliper, this is how it looks like. Skin fold caliper looks like this. It has a meter and two tongs, which helps in pressuring the things. A skin fold caliper is used to assess the skin fold thickness, so that a prediction of the total amount of body fat can be made. This method is based on the hypothesis that the body fat is equally distributed over the body, that the thickness of the skin fold is the measure of subcutaneous fat. So this is how it measures. To estimate the total amount of body fat, 4 skin folds are measured usually. For any person, if we want to identify the total body fat, 4 skin folds we identify. Bicep skin fold, that is from the front side of the middle upper arm. Tricep skin fold from the back side on the middle of the upper arm. Subscapular skin fold under the lowest point of the shoulder blade, in below the inferior angle of the scapula. Suprailiac skin fold above the upper bone of the hip, above the iliac crest.
Sorry.
For this measurement, the patient must be able to sit or stand in an upright position. Skin fold measurements are cheap, not very painful. See, here you have seen the tongs. Don't imagine that it will be pinching the patient and it is painful. No, it is not painful. It's not very painful. Little pain definitely it will be there, but not very painful. It is easy to perform, although practice is required. With the table of Durin and Wormsley, 1974, the percentage of body fat can be read by given age and sex. The table contained data for people aged 17 years and above. Reliability of all skin fold measurement, tricep skin fold is the most reliable one to assess. Please understand. Why? Because edema is not often seen in the upper arm. Because it is nearer to the heart, drainage usually occurs very nicely. So edema formation is less in the arm. That's why tricep skin fold is very reliable. The measurements are less reliable in elderly patients due to weak skin and muscles. As a result, their muscles are often taken in the skin fold. Also, in patients with chronic muscle diseases, dehydration and edema, skin fold measurements can give unreliable values. Lastly, the measurement should be performed by a trained person. The accuracy of measurement largely dependent on the way they are doing. So exactly, suppose here we have told bicep skin fold on the front side of the middle upper arm. You should know the anatomical landmarks exactly, and you should go for the midpoint of the upper arm, and then you have to take the fold. If you don't have knowledge of anatomical landmarks, a quack cannot measure the skin folds and can give a direction. Okay, so this skin fold caliper, after taking readings, we have a table. I will show you the table. We will compare in that table whether the patient, how the patient body fat distribution is, given by Durning in 1974. The picture was not clear. I couldn't get a correct picture. You can try it in the net. This is how the picture comes. This is for women in millimeters, and this is the percentage of fat. Suppose 15 millimeters, 10.5%, 16 millimeters. Then this is above age, this is between age 17 and 29. And this is from age 30 to 39, 40 to 49, 50 plus. Like that, they have given. Are you able to see this chart? Hello?
Hello?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, depending on this chart, you will measure the skin fold. Suppose suppose tomorrow you are doing a research on body mass and body fat, then you can use this skin fold caliper as the instrument and this chart as a measuring instrument. Okay,
Yes, sir.
so that's about skin fold calipers. Then the last part of this unit 1 is sliding caliper. Sliding caliper, this is just nothing but vernier calipers in your intermediate. I don't know whether you have done it or not. One
Yes,
instrument,
yes.
vernier calipers experiment will be there. Same thing. A sliding caliper is used to measure the distance between 2 points on a flat surface. As I told you, body anthropometric measurements, there are excuse me, there are various methods. So skin fold calipers we have used to measure the body fat. Here we are using sliding caliper to measure the distance between 2 points, especially on the bony landmarks. The fixed and sliding arm have both sharp and blunted ends. The sharp ends and blunted are for measurements on skeleton and living human being respectively. That's it. It just measures the 2 points on any 2 points on the skeleton or on the human being. Blunt points, 1 minute, I will show you. This picture, see, this is the sharp point, this is the blunt points. Okay, sharp points we use on the skeleton. Suppose the forensic medicine they will use it. Okay, suppose they got a you know that the clavicle will be different in male and female, right?
Yes, sir.
Suppose they get a clavicle and they got a body, a burnt body, and they want to identify whether it is a female body or a male body. At that time, they will be using these instruments. Okay.
Yes, sir.
So I think with this we have completed unit 1.
Okay.
Next week we will start unit 2. Dr. Hina,
Yes, sir.
could you please confirm my syllabus? How many topics I need to cover? Unit 2, it is under me or under someone else?
Sir, I will confirm from sir and I'll let you know.
Because I have forgotten to mark down the syllabus. They have given me the complete set of syllabus. Okay, which is measured. It's a measurement of reaction time. That means suppose an auditory impulse is given, immediately the patient has to react. So that reaction time is called as
But you are
audiovisual
not clearly
reaction.
audible.
I'm not clearly audible. What happened today?
Sir, not clearly. Your voice is breaking.
My voice is breaking now.
Your voice
Could
is
you hear
breaking,
me?
sir. Yes, sir. We missed the title, what you said, sir.
Audio visual reaction time. Could you hear me?
Yes, sir. Now it's fine.
It's fine, right? See, audio visual reaction time. See, this
Yes,
is the
sir.
apparatus. What you are looking at, the thing is the apparatus. One side operator will be sitting, the other side the patient will be sitting. So there will be a screen. So what the operator is doing, candidate cannot see. So it is the reaction time between the operator giving signal and then the identification of the signal by the candidate. Did you get it?
Yes, sir.
Or you want me to re-explain
We understood.
No, sir.
We
it?
understood.
Reaction time is a commonly used parameter for measuring implicit learning. In its measurement of reaction time, subject will be asked to respond by pressing the button as soon as he receives signal or the stimulus in the form of sound or light. Okay, whenever the signal, a sound or a light is given, immediately the client has to press the button. So the time he takes to press the button is called as audiovisual reaction time. The apparatus provides both auditory, low and high pitched sounds, and visual. Two color lights will be coming, one red light and one green. Okay, stimuli. The arrangement consists of source of stimulus, response, source of stimulus, that is any auditory stimulus or visual stimulus is given. Response key, this will be on the client side, and time recording device, which records the time between the stimulus and the reaction time. It's a simple apparatus. The response is given by the subject by pressing a key with his index finger. Time taken by the subject to give a response is displayed with an accuracy of 1 millisecond. So you can imagine even 1 millisecond difference also is recorded for the auditory and visual reaction time. So that is about the audio visual reaction time apparatus. If you want, I will show you the apparatus once again. You can see. This is the thing. One side operator will be sitting, the other side the client will be sitting. So these are the keys which the client will press whenever, suppose an visual stimulus is given, so immediately has to present the visual one. If an auditory stimulus is given, here high pitch and low pitch. See, here you have four switches. Okay, high pitch, low pitch, green and red light. So he has to, with his index finger, he has to press the things. From here, the operator will be giving the signal. Suppose he has given this signal, immediately he has to press the same key. So what he is pressing, it will not be seen because of the screen in between. I think this is clear for you.
Yes, yes, yes.
So that's the end of this topic, audiovisual reaction time.
Okay.
Next, we will go to biofeedback. Biofeedback therapy is an instrument-based learning process that is based on operant conditioning techniques. The governing principle is that any behavior, be it a complex maneuver such as eating or a simple task such as muscle contraction, when reinforced, its likelihood of being repeated and perfected increases several fold. So here, apparent conditioning, you might have learned Pavlov's experiment in your teaching methodology. In master degree, you might have learned about in learning, and also in psychology in the BPT level, you might have learned Pavlov's laws of conditioning, apparent conditioning. For you to remember, I can tell you that one. Dog and the meat. Whenever he sees the meat, every day he rings a bell and then give the food. So the dog gets saliva. After that, even if he doesn't see the food, when the bell is ringing, he gets the saliva. Did you remember this experiment? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So biofeedback is actually based on that. Even it may be a complex activity such as eating or holding something, placing something, complex activity, or a simple muscle contraction. When a feedback is given to you repeatedly, then perfection will get increased. Physical therapists use biofeedback to help refine a movement sequence, especially when in stroke patients, when we want to break a pattern or when we want to develop a pattern, at that time we will be using activation pattern to assist patient to achieve a goal. This technique involves using, you can use visual biofeedback, physical biofeedback, auditory feedback to guide the patient to give their optimal performance. The ultimate purpose is that the patient gets to know his own body signs and that he can control them consciously in first place using biofeedback equipment, afterwards even without. So suppose the movement is there, I will tell you one small example. I couldn't record it, that one. We have biofeedback here. See, one game will be there. I will tell you one very good example. For hand gripping, okay, one flight will be there, and several mountains will be there. Whenever and you will be given one object. When you press the object, electrodes are placed on your flexors. When you press hard the object, the flight will go up. When you don't press the object, the flight will come down. So if in between a mountain comes, so at that time you have to press hard the ball. Suppose we generally give the smiley ball to the patient. If you press hard, the flight will go up so that it will not hit the mountain. So this is the feedback, and this is seen on the screen. This is the feedback the patient will always get. So he keeps on pressing the ball. After some time, without feedback, he will learn how to control his muscles. Did you get it, Dr. Hina and Dr. Apurva?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Many different forms of biofeedback are currently used in the clinical setting. One is EMG biofeedback, which measures muscle tension. Then we have thermal biofeedback. It measures the skin temperature. Then we have neurofeedback or electroencephalography feedback, which measures brainwave activity. Electrodermography, which measures skin electrical activity. Then we have heat flux, which measures the rate at which heat is being dissipated from the body. Pneumography, which measures abdominal chest movement when breathing. Capnometry, it measures end tidal carbon dioxide levels. Chemoencephalography, it measures the differences in the color of light reflected back through the scalp based on the relative amount of oxygenated and unoxygenated blood in the brain. Photoplasmography, it measures peripheral blood flow, heart rate and heart rate variability. So this is a simple EMG biofeedback. These are the electrodes placed. You can see. And here on the screen, this is the feedback machine. It is connected through Bluetooth to the computer or tablet. This is thermal biofeedback. This is EEG biofeedback. This is usually used in psychological studies. This is pneumography. Abdominal chest movements are measured. See the electrodes, they are placed one on chest and one on the abdomen. This is photoplasmography. Now, what is the mechanism of action of this biofeedback? The autonomic nervous system regulates the functioning of organs and functions of the body like breathing and heart beating. You all know. See, our breathing and heart beating, these are all autonomic. It isn't dominated by our will, but it reacts to our mood. Definitely, suppose you are tomorrow, I say that there will be viva voce. So definitely your heartbeat will start beating fast. Okay, or if you, I don't know whether you are all married or not. When you first see your fiancé, again your heart starts beating. Yes or no, Dr. Hina? Hello?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes or no? Am I right or wrong?
Yes, sir. You're right.
Okay, so these systems usually react on our mood. There are two major components of the autonomic nervous system, the sympathetic and parasympathetic systems. The parasympathetic works in a particular at rest and recuperation, while the sympathetic works at efforts. Due to chronic stress, the autonomic nervous system can function worse. Consequently, the regulation of the body may get disrupted and an imbalance between the two systems may arise. Okay, so at that time, biofeedback will help to balance the things. So that's about the biofeedback. I want to show you the pictures once again, different varieties so that you can identify. This is EMG biofeedback.
Yes.
This is thermal biofeedback. This is how it appears. This is EEG biofeedback, nemography, photoplasmography, PPG. That's it. So this topic is also finished. Next, we will go into bone densitometry. See, bone densitometry is also called as DEXA scan or DXA scan. It is a investigative procedure. Bone densitometry, it is not a therapeutic instrument. It is a scan. It is a investigating machine. Bone densitometry, commonly called as DEXA scan or DXA scan. Bone densitometry, also called dual energy X-ray absorptiometry, DEXA or DXA, uses a very small dose of ionizing radiation to produce pictures of the inside of the body, usually the lower or lumbar spine and hips, to measure bone loss, to identify the osteoporosis. Okay, we can in the lower lumbar spine and hips, we can use this scan. This is called as bone densitometry. It uses ionizing radiation, it's very small dose, and then you get the pictures of that. It is commonly used to diagnose osteoporosis and to assess an individual risk for developing osteoporotic fractures. So in your clinical practice, you might have seen bone densitometries many times. So that is about the bone densitometry. Okay. So it is usually a scan that identifies the osteoporosis in the bones. Next one, jumping power board. See, this jumping power board is actually out of our scope because it is actually used in Pilates exercises. Pilates jump board benefits, which is an accessory attached to the reformer that can bring a lot of benefits such as muscular endurance, cardiovascular endurance, motor coordination, strength and weight loss. This is how it appears, jumping power board. And it is usually used by in the Pilates method. Yes, Hina?
It is
Hello?
not visible. It is not,
It's not visible.
sir.
Hello?
Now,
Hello, is it visible?
yes, now,
Okay. Shall I start from the beginning?
yes, sir. And it's
Okay. Jumping power board. Pilates jumping power board benefits, which is an accessory attached to the reformer See, this is the reformer. The down one is the reformer, and this is the power board. It is attached to the reformer that can bring a lot of benefits, such as you can use for muscular endurance, improving muscular endurance by increasing cardiovascular endurances, motor coordination, strength, and weight loss. This is how it appears. Could you see Dr. Hina and Apurva? Dr. Apurva? Hello? As the platform can be used to perform exercises such as footwork, mermaid exercises, support for stand exercises, the Pilates jump board benefits are especially feel by elderly people or clients who have difficulty in balancing among other possibilities. As the platform can be used to perform exercises such as, that's about jumping power board. Next one, Podia scan. Hello, Dr. Hina, could you see this? Hello. I think connection lost. Connection maybe. Connection maybe. हेलो हाँ 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 बताइए हेलो हेलो